Welcome to the Financial Rebellion Podcast. I'm your host, Todd Romer. We started this podcast for two specific reasons. Number one, we've been helping thousands of people across the country through the speaking tour and the Financial Rebellion newsletter, how to rebel against traditional financial norms that are not working. We teach money way differently, how to dream differently, how to overcome limiting beliefs about yourself and money, how to save and spend money differently to create less stress and increase that control that you desire. And we teach how to create significant wealth over time by learning more about investing and so much more. Some of our guests come on and show you what their side hustle is about, how they're creating additional income, and even turning those side hustles into legit businesses. And we have other expert guests that are teaching money the Financial Rebellion way, like we do too. The second reason we started the podcast is we're big fans of credit unions. And there are millions of people across the country that are still unsure about what the difference between a credit union and a bank actually is. Well, when you actually manage and do money the Financial Rebellion way, it lines up beautifully with being a member of a credit union. Now, let's get into this episode of Financial Rebellion. Welcome to this episode of Financial Rebellion. We're excited to have Nick Ford on today, who is outside of Atlanta, owns a company called Transparent Staffing. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I think you're more like a professional connector, Nick. But before I welcome you to the podcast, I want to tell our viewers and listeners what the mission of Financial Rebellion is. For over 15 years, we've been helping thousands of people, primarily 18 to 34, change their mindset about money, rebel against traditional financial norms that are not working, help them reduce financial stress, increase financial confidence, and learn how to create ridiculous wealth by learning more about investing. That's just one of the elements that we bring with the Financial Rebellion platform. So, well, let's welcome Nick Ford to the Financial Rebellion podcast. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me on as a guest. I love podcasts and I love the mission behind Financial Rebellion, and so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Well, we are too. And before we get into your business, Transparent Staffing, we always ask the icebreaker of every guest. Tell us your, in a 1 minute or less, if you will. What was your best money move and your worst money move over the last few years, or just in the past, or as recent as yesterday?
Yeah, I think the best money move that I've made was just starting to invest early. I had an early leader at my first job that advised me to switch my 401k to putting 10% in after I started earning some commission. And when I left that first job, I had a good chunk of change in that 401k. And then the second part of that was self-directing it. So taking it out of the retirement at 65 plan they had it in and investing it more into some, revenue generating stocks and dividend paying stocks. So just starting investing early was the best decision I made.
You can never go wrong with that. What about your worst money move that you've made in the past or as recent as yesterday?
Luckily, I think that I haven't made any big one-time money mistakes, but what I would say is spending money on things like eating out, going and get coffee out, and ordering, food delivery and things like that. Just, wasting money on stuff that wasn't going to give me any return. When you start thinking about, what could I put that money into rather than, the $50 Uber Eats dinner that I could have made for $10 at home. Wait, I could have put $40 into a stock and it could have been making me money. So what am I thinking? So those things add up, and just repetitively doing that was probably the worst money decisions I've made.
Well, you're doing what we teach in Financial Rebellion, one of the many things we teach, right? And that is to kind of switch to an investor mindset versus a consumer mindset, like you mentioned with the $50 Uber Eats. So good for you. Okay, tell us about I want to say temporary staffing, and it's funny, it comes out of my brain. Transparent Staffing is your company, but before you get there, just tell us where you grew up, and then how you got to start this business, Transparent Staffing. I'm excited to learn more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So grew up in Dallas, Texas. My dad was a Navy pilot and then went to Delta Airlines where he was for about 40 years before he retired. And then we moved to Atlanta. So now I've been in Atlanta for over 20 years, a little bit. Played baseball in college. You can see my jersey hanging up behind me. And so, grew up competitive, always was wanting to do better and win, ultimately. And as far as how I got into transparent staffing, I spent about 5 years working in another staffing agency and just decided I wanted to go out on my own. I'd had an entrepreneurial mindset for since high school, probably. My grandfather owned a company. He had about 300 employees, so he had a pretty big company. And I saw him do it, and I'd wanted to be an entrepreneur. And transparent staffing was a great opportunity for me because I was able to get it started while I had a full time job, and my employer at the time was comfortable with me having a side hustle. And I had a plan to turn it into my full time job, and that took 6 months to a year. Put some money away, made sure I had some runway to get the business going and be able to support a small family. And, I just believe in bringing transparency to the staffing industry and doing it differently than how I'd done it at other companies. And that just comes down to being open and honest with the people I work with. So that's what I'm trying to live out in the business.
It's cool. Where do you play college baseball?
I played at Harding University. They're a D2 school in Arkansas. So I was out in Arkansas for about 4 years during that, 20 years being in Atlanta.
Okay, I just have 10 seconds quick. I'm going to guess that you were you either played uh, catcher or third base. Am I close?
I was a pitcher. I did play third
Okay,
base
man.
before I went to college, but when I went to college, I was full time pitcher.
Okay, good for you. All right, moving off of sports and baseball, which we like to have fun on the podcast anyway. I'm actually about 90% on spot on when I uh, see people and they say they play a certain sport, and I can kind of go, I bet you're a forward in basketball. I bet you play striker in soccer, women's or men's. I'm about 9 out of 10. All right. So I missed with you. Okay. So then that's very intriguing that your employer, who was, you're working for a staffing company, and I assume you are kind of competing against them. They still let you kind of roll this side hustle, or am I wrong with that?
So your assumption is correct. They would not have been super cool with that because I would have been competing with them. So when I started transparent staffing, I had left that first job out of college. So at the time, I was doing employee benefits. So staffing, employee benefits, they were kind of adjacent, but not competing with each other. So that's why my boss was okay with me doing it. He kind of saw it as a way to get in with a company, establish a relationship with them by helping them with the recruiting while, I wasn't selling insurance for another company. So they were comfortable with it. So yeah, I was able to get it started as a side business working in employee benefits. I wasn't competing with the staffing agency I was working for.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So then, but how does transparent staffing differentiate from traditional staffing companies? And how are you getting access to people to look at job openings? So tell us a little bit more about that, how the business actually unfolds. You got two parties involved, someone looking for a job, right? Or maybe they don't know that they're needing another job, but you can say, hey, you pull people from another position to then hire them. But how do you then get yourself in front of these companies that are saying, hey, this Nick guy is going to do some good, middleman work for us?
Yeah. So I've been in sales since I was out of college. When I was in the recruiting company that I was in for about 5 years, that was a primarily commission driven position. If I didn't, make placements and cross sell into existing clients, I wasn't going to be making money. Wouldn't have a job. So it was very competitive sales related industry. My degree in college was actually a BBA in professional sales. They had a professional sales program, which I think more colleges should have that. I think a lot of kids out of the business departments are going to go into some kind of sales job, but very few colleges seem to offer a sales, career type degree. So But as far as how I differentiate myself, it comes down to me to the transparency. A lot of staffing agencies, if you're not in the industry, you don't realize it. But if I get an open position on, let's say I'm trying to fill let's say I call it a sales job, an outside sales position in Atlanta. Well, most staffing agencies want to throw as many resumes at the wall as possible and just see which one sticks. They're not really taking the time to figure out the culture of the company, what they're really looking for, how this person's going to fit in with the team, who they're reporting to, all of those like details that are going to help a recruiter fill a position. They just want to send as many resumes as possible, not just because they don't want to spend the time, but what people not in the industry don't realize is every time I send a resume to a client or another agency sends it to a client, that resume is tied to the agency. So for a year or sometimes 2 years, if that company wants to hire any of those people I sent over, they have to pay the staffing agency a fee. So I don't like to operate that way because I just don't think that's very transparent. And so when I get an open position on, I do a lot of legwork on the front end, figuring out what the company is really looking for. And then I want to send them ideally 3 rockstar candidates and let them choose from those 3 versus spending time, interviewing and sending over 20, 30 people for an open job, which in my mind, the owner of that business or the hiring manager of that business, if they wanted to review 30 resumes, they could do that on their own and not pay me. I would, if I was them, I want to give me the 3 people that that I could potentially hire and let me choose from those 3 people. So,
Yeah. That's cool differentiation that you've got there. You touched on sales and that you took a lot of you said you majored or had a minor in sales at the school. Where do you go to college? Where do you go to school? You went to Harding, right?
Har- Harding, yeah. Yeah. My
Okay.
degree was in professional sales. Yeah.
Professional sales degree. That's pretty unique and cool. So, what can you share with the listeners? Because sales is everything, right? If they're starting a side hustle, right? It doesn't matter if they're putting it on Instagram, social media, their product that they're trying to sell, everything comes down to sales. Is there a couple of tips that you can give our viewers when it comes to just how to sell and stand out with something
Mhm.
that they may go, okay, I'm gonna try this, and I just learned this from this guy named Nick Ford today on Financial Rebellion podcast. What are a couple of
Yeah.
tips that stick out when it comes to selling?
So the tip I would have given myself 10 years ago would be become a good listener. So take the time to listen to your potential client. And the second tip is to realize that sales is problem solving. So if you can do a good job of listening and understanding what a client's problems are and then figure out how your solution can solve that problem, you will have a much better time at being able to close business because ultimately most people, and especially in business, it's what can you do for me? How are you going to make my job easier? How are you going to get me to the next level of where I'm trying to take my business? For me, it's
Mhm.
how can I get the right person in the right seat at my company? That's what my clients want to know. And I work on a lot of clinical jobs, so like a therapist or like a psychiatrist or a doctor, those are revenue generating positions. So I know for the owner of that company or the CFO, I can tell them, hey, I know how much it costs you to not have this position filled because you'd be billing for a psychiatrist, X amount per session, this amount per week. So I know you need that position filled and I know how to fill that job. So being able to do things like that and first understand the client, it depends on what you're selling, but in any, sales profession, understanding your client, understanding what their problems are and be willing to listen. Don't just go in and pitch them. They're going to know that you don't know what they're dealing with.
Yeah. I am constantly learning. I have been in sales for a long time. There's nothing that I am going to say that I am fantastic at when it comes to that. So I continue to learn as well. Listening is it sounds so easy, but it's not. So it is a skill, right? Because we are just so humanly, naturally wanting to talk about how good something is that we have to sell, product, service, whatever, right? So I love that. Okay, so what would you share and tell, Nick Ford back at 23 or in your 20s? You still look super young to me. It sounds like you've got a family, right, as well?
Yeah, so I'm 33 now, and we've got 3
Okay.
kids. So, I've got an 8-year-old boy, a 6-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old girl. So we got a full house
Okay.
over
And
here.
yeah, I can tell all three are probably going to be entrepreneurs too. And so, what would you tell someone in their early to mid 20s, or even someone listening in their 30s as well? This is the thing that's kind of fun. We're seeing a lot of people, Nick, that are just kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired of their either financial position or just not feeling much purpose in life and trying to get out of this fog. And they have ideas. They are just afraid to take that first step. What would you share with someone who's just about ready to, do something, but they are still hesitant to start that side hustle or side business?
Yeah. So I would say that it's going to be just as hard to sit on the idea and not do anything with it. Probably it'd be harder to do that than it will be to just take the first step in whatever your business is. So the piece of advice I'd give is just try it. Take the first step. Come up with a business plan or just test the market and see if there's a need. Offer your service at a discount or for free, and let one client tell you if it's a good service or if it's something that's not really needed. So I'd just say go try it. Take the first step. Stop sitting on the idea. Stop sitting on the fence. You'll have so much more reward from that, even if it doesn't work out, than if you sat on the idea and never did anything with it.
Try is what I'm hearing. Financial Rebellion, we are sponsored, if you will, by a lot of the credit union industry that are out there. We work with a number of credit unions around the country, from Kemba to Alabama Credit Union, have relationships with a number of credit unions that we are help elevating. By the way, their ability to differentiate themselves. Speaking of sales and differentiation, differentiating themselves from banks. And I believe you're a member of a credit union too, Nick, right?
I am. I'm a fan of credit unions.
Yeah. Is it Delta Community? Did I hear that right in the past?
Yep. Yeah. So they started out as a, credit union for Delta employees, which my dad was for like 40 years. And so I joined when I was probably in middle school or something. And I've stayed with them. And, we've bought a house with them, bought cars with them, done most of our banking with them. So yeah, they've been great. And, credit unions, I think, are just a good option in general. So
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a $2.4 trillion industry, the credit union industry, in terms of assets they oversee. And just we're helping them market even better than what a lot of people still don't know the difference between a bank and a credit union, et cetera. So, okay, getting back to your experiences at 33, how's do you have some goals where the business is going over the next 12 months to 24 months? Anything new that you're doing or trying to grow transparent staffing?
yeah, as far as goals for the business, I always have goals, revenue goals for the year, for the next, couple of years. And then, something that, I think everyone's trying to figure out right now is how to integrate AI into what they're doing. So that's something that is, top of mind for me. I guess I don't know if I would be a late adopter now that I haven't dove into it super heavily. I have used it, but I've been hesitant to automate things like, reaching out to candidates or reaching out to businesses with an AI agent. I've been pitched them a lot and I've hesitated to do it. I've tinkered with it some, but to me, it's not super authentic when I get those messages because I can tell when they're AI and it's a little off putting. And so I wonder how that I would come across to, prospective, clients, but everyone's using it, so it's an inevitable thing. I think I'm just gonna be careful about how I integrate it.
Yeah, right. Or just invest in the stocks that are the picks and shovels for the AI growth that is still going on, right? It's crazy, crazy good.
Yeah,
But um,
it's
okay,
crazy.
so
Yeah.
then as we kind of get close to wrap it up here, what are you going to tell your kids when they are, maybe you're doing it now? I had a recent guest, because your oldest is how old? Is it eight, seven,
8. Mhm. He's 8, yeah.
eight? Okay. So I had a guest on recently, I think it was last week. Her name is Kelly Shea, and she lives in Orlando, Florida, and has you may want to, this is right up your alley too. Kelly, give you some more shout out. She was awesome too. She has a product called Innovation Station, and they're kits that she is selling to the homeschooling community, trying to get into public education, of reaching 5-year-olds to basically 13-year-olds to help them keep that mind that they have as a young kid, start thinking about invention and problem solving even at that age. Because as she said, which is an amazing statistic, is that the what is if I could say it, remember correctly, I guess between the ages of 2 and 6, the level of quote genius or freedom to think and be creative is like at a 98 percentile. And then
Yeah.
as kids go through traditional schooling and education, classroom and all that, it starts to diminish like down to 5% by the age of 18. Like the problem
Yeah.
solving, the creativity, thinking about inventions, how to problem solve, goes away. And I'm like, God, that is super sad, right? So it's just a way that we all need to maybe help. We need to educate, include that into our education, right? So
Yeah.
what will you tell your 8-year-old if you if you haven't already? Because I've got stories with my kids about problem solving when it comes to business and entrepreneurship. What are you going to be telling your 8-year-old to prepare them for teenage life, moving on, and kind of the general business economic world we're in?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, you're selling directly to me. Is it Kelly that has that product? Because she should reach out to me. We homeschool our 3 kids, and I'm all
Okay,
about just
yeah.
keeping the innovation alive. So, yeah, and my son Aiden, he's already started his own small business at 8. We got him
See,
involved.
why am I not shocked? Right?
he he probably begged me for since he was almost 7 to start his own small business. And last fall we found a kids entrepreneurial market, and he set up his little company. So he sold all these different tie-dye products and stuff. And then he had some leftovers. He door knocked in our neighborhood and sold like another $150 worth of stuff. And
Oh my
now
gosh.
he wants to be on podcasts and tell people about his small business because he's like, Dad, I'm a small business owner. I need to be on podcast. So he's awesome.
We
And
got to bring him on. We got to bring him on soon. I'm not kidding. That would be a blast, actually. So
yeah.
we'll talk off air. But think about what he can do to inspire people in their 20s, teens, 30s, and 40s. He might be inspiring a 44-year-old listening to go, wait a minute, if
Yeah.
this guy could do it, I'm going to do it.
You're never too young to be an entrepreneur. That's what I took away from that. But yeah, I mean, with him and with young people is just try your idea out, and don't let people talk you out of it. When I started Transparent Staffing 5 years ago, at the same time I got into real estate, and I had wanted to do a rental property, just one. I did an Airbnb rental property, and my brother and my parents, and at first my wife, before I actually told her what the plan was, were all like, "That's too risky. Like what you've never done that before. You don't know what you're doing with that." And it worked out great, and we ended up flipping that first Airbnb and made 6-figure profit in a year off of it. And at the same time I was getting my business going, and that was side income, that was some extra money coming in. And if I hadn't just tried it and trusted myself, I didn't just jump, I had a plan, even though the people around me probably didn't think I did. But I would just say go for it, try it. Take a risk from a position of you don't want to you don't want to lose your shirt on the way, but take the risk, try out your idea.
Take the risk. That is a common theme that we are basically teaching throughout Financial Rebellion, because looking back and regretting, I wish I would have done that, is it's just not a fun feeling, right? So, um, awesome. Nick, you've been a fantastic guest on Financial Rebellion podcast. Everybody who's listening and watching, for you to learn more about what we're doing and not just the podcast and to be inspired by young entrepreneurs, but we teach money very differently. We teach you to truly rebel against traditional financial norms. Go to financial-rebellion.com and subscribe to our free weekly email newsletter. It's going to help you become smarter about money, investing in business in less than 10 minutes a week. And again, we're big fans of credit unions. We're helping people really kind of go, wait a minute, why am I not banking with a credit union or even my business banking? People are moving over to credit unions because there's some significant advantages of how we teach money the financial rebellion way that credit unions can be, an awesome banking partner. So, Nick, again, thank you for being on the Financial Rebellion podcast, and I'll speak to you on the side about Kelly Shea and how to get contact with her. And then I'm not kidding. It would be fun to have your son on in the near future too.
He'd love it. I appreciate you having me on.
You got it. All right, that's this episode of Financial Rebellion. We will be back with another episode soon. Thanks for listening and watching as well.
Ow.